In this video, I'm going to show you how to work with containers. Now, containers are quite an advanced feature and there is an awful lot that you can do with them. So it's quite a lot that we're going to be wrapping our heads around in this video. So make sure you've got your caps strapped on and you are ready for some serious learning. So let's navigate over to our website by clicking on View Your Website on the top left-hand side. And I'm going to go ahead and just add a block, an empty block. And when I've added my block, you'll notice that if I open my navigator, I've got a block. And in that block, I've got a container. And then in that container, there's the row, and in the row, there's the columns. So containers are automatically added anytime you add a block. Now, containers pretty much have a bunch of advanced features that we are going to use to design more advanced designs. So instead of using rows and columns to get the design you want, you can actually use just containers. So to give you a brief example, I'm going to add a new block. And I'm going to go ahead and delete the row that is within this container. So I'm just going to go ahead, right click and delete that row. And then within this container, I can simply add another container. And then I can add another container to that. And so I've got these three containers. And what I'm going to do is actually have these containers exist next to each other within this container. And then I want to have them be horizontally aligned. So I've got, that's where I want that to be. There we go. So if I close the navigator so you can actually see what's happening. I've got two containers within a bigger container. And what I want to happen with these containers is to have them look like that. So I'm going to open my navigator again, make sure I've got the right container selected. And then I'm going to make sure that my containers there are horizontally aligned. And now if I exit out of the settings, you'll see that I've got exactly the same layout as I have up here with just containers. So here I've got a block, and I'm going to open the navigator again to make it more simple. So again, I've got the block, I've got the container, in the container I've got a row, and in the row I've got two columns. In the second block, I've got a block that's got a container that's got two containers in it. So it's simplified the structure already of this because I can do everything I need to do with these containers. So I'm going to go over the settings quickly for the containers just to show you that it is all pretty much the same. So you'll see we've got our layout, which is the direction. All of this is the same as with blocks, so you're already familiar with this. So I'm not going to go over that in too much detail. I will touch on it as I go through this video. Then we have our size, and there's going to be some differences in the sizing here. For example, whether or not it's a fixed size, whether or not it fills the parent, and whether or not it hugs the content. Again, I'm going to go into that in more detail in just a second. I'm just making you aware of the different settings that we have available within containers for now. I'm going to show you them all in use in just a second. Then we have our spacing. It's exactly the same. Margins to the outside, padding on the inside. Then we have our styles, borders, backgrounds, shadows, all exactly the same as for rows and columns. And then we have our visibility. It's the same stuff. So none of that is particularly different except for the sizing. So we're going to come to that in just a second. So what I'm going to do is actually go ahead and delete this block, and I'm going to delete this block, and I'm going to add a new block, and I'm going to add something that I can replicate. So let me come down and let's say that I want to replicate something with quite a bit of information. So let's say I want to replicate this design. So I add that design, you'll see I've got a block, I've got a container, it's got rows, 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 and within those rows it's got columns and columns and columns. So what I want to do is replicate this design without using rows and columns. I'm just going to use containers to do this. So I'm going to come here and I'm going to add a new block. It's going to be an empty block. And then I want to go ahead and delete the rows and columns. So again, I'm going to open my navigator, going to come to this block, and I'm going to delete the rows. So now I've got a container, and within this container, I would like to have three containers lined up next to each other. So I'm going to add a container. And again, within this container, I'm going to add another container, but instead I'm going to come here to my navigator. I'm simply going to clone the container that I created. So I'm going to right click on that container. I'm going to clone it. So now I've got three containers within my container. I want to come to this container setting, and you'll see I'm using the navigator a lot to do this. It's very handy dandy. I don't need to particularly be looking at what I'm doing right now regarding building out the structure. I just need to use my navigator. And so now I'm coming to my main container, and I'm going to line that all up horizontally. So now I've got those 3 containers contained within a container. And what I'm going to do is simply copy the content so that I don't have to stress too much about what's going on. So I'm going to clone this content, and I'm simply going to drag it into this spot. And I'm going to do the same for this. So I'm just going to clone that and scroll down a little bit so I can see. I can move that down there. Clone this. Move it down there. Clone this. And move it down there. And then the same for this. I mean, we could go ahead and just clone everything the way we want, but I am just going to do it this way. So this is taking a little second, but it's all right. Just making sure that everything is in those containers. All right, so I've got the first 3 there. And obviously the design is looking a little bit different because there needs to be some spacing. So if I come here to my container, so I'm going to close that block, and I'm going to come here to, again, my main container. I'm going to add a little bit of spacing. So let's say about 10, 20, let's see, 20 pixels. I think a little bit more than 20. So there, I think that's good. It's not exactly the same, but you understand the point. Then I'm going to, again, because this one is not very good, I'm going to click on this container. And here's where things are going to get a little bit interesting. What I'm going to do is change the sizing. So for the height, it's currently hugging the content, but instead I want it to fill the parent. So now this is the same size as the parent container. So when I click into this container, I want to make sure that this content is aligned to the center so that it's over there. So it looks a lot more similar to what's happening over there. And then I don't need to go to these and change the sizing either. What I can do as well is also just, again, right click on this container and clone it. So now I've got that. Now all I need to do is copy this content. So if I come here, let me close the navigator. It's a little bit in the way right now. I'm going to clone that content, and I'm going to drag it down to here. I want to delete that heading, and I'm going to clone that heading, and I'm going to drag it down over here, and then clone that last little piece of content and drag it over there. And so now you can imagine that this is pretty much exactly the same. But now we might want to add some spacing between the content elements for each of these to get it looking a bit more exact. So I'm going to click on the container, and I might want to add a little bit of a gap. So let's say, yeah, 6 pixels of spacing. I can do the same for each of these containers. Make sure that they've all got 6 pixels of spacing for all of the content within them. And you'll just see how easy this is to very quickly and easily go through each of these and change the way it looks. And now we've very quickly and very easily created pretty much the same design that we have up here. And we've done it all just using containers, no rows, no columns, nothing. So that is one of the ways that you can use containers to pretty much design out entire pages and blocks without using anything else. So containers are incredibly versatile with regards to what you can do with them. Now, something else that's important to note regarding containers, I'm going to go ahead and delete these blocks. So let me just delete that one, right click, delete this one. I'm going to add a new block. I'm going to look for a block with some buttons that I can replicate. So let's go ahead and go with the About Our Company. So you'll see that we've got these 2 buttons, and the buttons are contained within a container. So you'll see we've got them next to each other, and this is because all of those layout settings are being defined by the container itself. So let me give you an example. If I just right click outside of that container and I add a new button, that button is just plonked on the page off to the side because it doesn't have anywhere to go. It's really just being held within this big container, and you'll see it's being aligned to whatever those settings are for that container. So this button actually needs to be put into its own container in order to have its alignment settings created. So what I'm going to do is right click on that button, and I'm going to click on Wrap. And once I've wrapped that, it's going to be put into its own container. And now I can start customizing where on the page this button lands. And you'll see if I add this button again, let me just clone it, those buttons are then added underneath each other. So they're not being automatically put in a way that I would like them to be. I need to come to my container and I need to change those settings. So I'm going to make them horizontally aligned, and I'm going to increase the gap to, say, 10 pixels. There we go. And then I want to have them center aligned. So instead of justifying them to the start, I actually want to put them at the center. So now we're getting slightly closer to the design that we actually want. So I'm going to come to this button and I want to make it a large button, and I want to make it say learn more. And I didn't do that properly. There we go. All right. And then I want to go ahead and change the text settings of this button. So I'm just running through this a little bit. I'm going to go into more detail on the customization of different elements in the next video. And I'm also going to just bring the line size down a bit. So we're getting kind of close to what that button looks like. All right, and then we're going to go to the second button. And again, I'm going to do the same sort of thing. Services, and again this button is also going to get a little bit of a makeover, some thicker text and some thinner lines maybe. There we go. And then I do want to change the color of this button as well, so we're going to edit that. We're going to say that the background is white. We need to change the color of the text, so come here to the text. Color is going to be black for both of those. And then we want to make it a large button as well. Oh, let's change the spacing again of the lines here. There we go. And then I'm going to give it a border, which is just going to be a simple black border with a slightly bigger width, maybe 5 pixels. 5 pixels is way too many. 3 is also too many. 2 is good. All right, so there we go. We've now got those buttons that are very similar to the buttons above. And again, if you want to change the way these buttons are laying out, you would do this all in the container settings. You would change whether or not you want them vertically aligned, horizontally aligned, if you want them center aligned, whatever it is that you want to do with these buttons. I can't change the vertical spacing because the container itself is not big enough right now, but you understand the overall gist. So we've got those buttons created, not the end, the center. So that is another way that containers are going to be hugely helpful for you. It is going to be in aligning and customizing the layout of elements like buttons and pictures and things like that. So one last thing that I want to touch on is the sizing. I want to go into much more depth on this right now. It's quite an important setting and is going to help you achieve unique designs. So let me go ahead and again delete this block, and I'm going to add a new block. And I want a block that's got a picture so I can give you a good idea of what it looks like. So let's go with these cute, pretty pink balloons. So when I click on this image again, you'll see that I can't really do much in terms of aligning this image. So what I'm going to do is make this a round image, and I'm going to change the sizing a little bit. I'm going to make it, let's make it 500. And I want this image to be in a container. So I'm going to open the navigator. This image is currently in a container. So I want to select that container. I want to select that container. And I'm just going to move these settings over here so you can see what's happening. This image is sitting in this container, and there's a lot of space off to the side here. So if I go ahead and decide to, let me give this container a background actually so that we can see it properly. So I'm just going to add a background to it, and I really don't think I can look at that for very long. Let's go with the coral. It's kind of on theme at least. Okay, so now I've got this container and the content within it is strangely aligned. So if I want to come here to my alignment, I could then align that in the center. And maybe I don't want the image to be so tight within this container. What I'm going to do is come here to the sizing. So you'll see that there's space on the sides of this container, and that's because the width setting for the sizing is set to fill the parent. It's not set to hug the content, and it's not set to a fixed size. So if I hug the content, you'll see that now there is no spacing anywhere around this image. I can do the same with the height. Currently the height is hugging the content. I can change that to fill the parent. And you'll see then that my content is hanging outside of that container. Now that is something that you could decide to do from a design perspective. You can also then come here to the layout settings, and instead of laying it out to the start, you can lay it to the center, and then you've got that fun little design going on there. If that's something that you want to achieve, you can do that. And I have clicked out of my container settings, so let's go back to our container settings over here. And then you can also make it a fixed size. So when you change the fixed size of the height, we're going to have it be, well, let's have it be 200. Oh, I'm using the big container. That's not what I want. Sorry. Let me just undo that. This is the container I want. So here, let me come here. If I change that to a fixed size, you'll see that that then gets squished up behind that content as well. And the content within the container is moved up as well. So again, then if I wanted to come to the content within it, I could align that to the start, and then that's hanging off of there. So that is some of the ways that changing the sizing of the container is going to affect your designs and the way those designs appear within the container. You can also go ahead and play with the max width. So you can say, no, actually this container is only going to take up 52% of the parent container or column or row, whatever it is. And that's going to then change the size of that container and of course adjust the size of the content within it. And then of course, if we apply any sort of spacing, so margin on the outside, padding on the inside, you can really get creative with what you're doing with your containers. When it comes to hanging images and content like this, be very careful, please. This is not generally an intentional thing that you want to do. This is for advanced users if you are wanting to hang content on your pages. But that is pretty much everything you need to know about containers. Like I said, they are incredibly versatile, and there is an awful lot that you can achieve with them when it comes to creating advanced designs on your websites. I highly recommend playing around with all of the different settings, trying to create entire page designers using only containers, get really comfortable with using them and the different settings that apply to them and how those settings affect the content being held within those containers. Because once you know how to properly use containers, you will be able to design the most amazing things, pretty much whatever your heart desires on this page designer. All right, and in the next video, I'm going to be going over some content modules. I'll see you there.